Hey, it's Carly.
Hey, it's Shamina. And
And we're back.
welcome back to Emotionful. If you are listening and this is your first time joining us, welcome. Carly and I did a podcast a couple years ago. We called it Emotionful, normalizing emotions and what we were experiencing and going through. I'm a licensed mental health counselor, so I brought in a little psychology, mental health stuff perspective to it, in addition to my own personal stuff. Carly and I have been friends since high school, and so we decided that we wanted to do a podcast a while ago. So we are back. We are doing a 4 episode kind of mini series that we're super excited to bring to you guys. So welcome again.
Yes, and as Shamina mentioned, she brought the educational and I brought the baggage.
I like that.
No, but I really think that with what had transpired in my life at the time, it opened that door for us. And then, me and you have always talked about, I feel like, emotion in that sense. So we were like, let's normalize this. And maybe, I think when you put it out there of what you're feeling, it makes other people feel more okay with saying how they're feeling. Or at least I feel like that was at least my goal in the Emotionful. Um, and now we're both on a new adventure, and that's why we want to come back and hang out with y'all a couple more times. Um, so pretty much I guess I'll go into the reason we started talking about this and decided to create a little mini series is we're both now in new healthy relationships and just realizing that like while it's a healthy relationship doesn't mean it's always easy, but in the best way, like it definitely is challenging, but that still brings up a lot of emotion. Um and I thought it would be fun to kind of talk about it because I think sometimes social media or your friends, you don't really have that platform to be like, yes, I'm happy and this is healthy, but it's hard and you might still struggle with that, and that's okay.
And I, even as a therapist, like working with my clients, I think that's one of the things I try to normalize for them is like how hard relationships are in general. And then
Hmm.
coming out of an unhealthy or toxic relationship and entering into a healthy one, it's like a whole new ball game. And I really don't think we talk about it enough, how challenging it can be to like make that switch and really working on your own part in that cycle. And so we're super excited to be able to kind of spend some time talking about this stuff and hopefully normalizing it for anybody who has experienced it or is listening along with us.
Yeah, and you make a good point of any relationship is hard. So that could be a whole nother thing. But so I think for our first episode we wanted to dive into just the overall transition. And so, what did that look like for both of us in terms of, you know, um, remembering to give yourself self compassion and time and just for me, I realized, I was single for about 3 years, give or take, before I dated, but I wasn't in an official relationship. Um, and I thought I had done, well, okay, I don't want to say I thought I did do a lot of work, but it was by myself. And so then being in this relationship um brought up so many new triggers of just, being with somebody. And so that's something to discuss. And then just like learning to feel safe and trusting yourself again after what you experienced in the past.
So to catch people up, last time we were here, Carly was single and working on, I think you were dating. I'm sure you were dating at the time.
Yeah,
And I was,
online dating.
yeah, um, I was in a relationship, a different relationship at the time. So
Hmm.
since then, I left that relationship, and we can kind of get a little more into that as well. Started dating somebody new, and then Carly and I have kind of been on this journey together. We're about like 6 months apart from when I started dating my person to when she started dating hers. So I've like 6 months ahead of her with some of the stuff that we've experienced. She'd be texting me like, "This is what's going on, and this is how I'm feeling." I was like, "Yup, I know that. Been there."
Yeah. Yeah. And it's nice to hear that. And just because I think the biggest thing, and we talked about this a lot in the past when I was going through the breakup, is what is so helpful, I think, is just knowing that you're not alone in these feelings, because I think these feelings can bring a lot of like loneliness feeling to it. And makes you feel like you're the only one and like, what's wrong with me? Why do I feel this way? So it is nice when, you are being vulnerable and you share how you're feeling and someone's like, yeah. And you're like, okay, that's normal. And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, oh, bet. Like, that's so, um, that's really a comforting and like reassuring thing for me, at least. That's probably my biggest thing. But I would say, like, for me, the triggers were really big because I guess I wasn't expecting them to like hit the way that they did, if that makes sense, Like, I guess I expected to have some, but 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 then sometimes when it hit me, I was like, "Whoa, I was not expecting that to be an issue." Like, not an issue, but like a situation. And I'm trying to think now of like certain oh, okay, so for example, my boyfriend just recently moved in, and I realize I have a lot of feelings behind like the expectation of me being a woman and a man living with me, and like almost like that expectation of like being a homemaker, because I feel like in the past I was expected to cook, I was expected to clean. I worked 40 hours a week, and at that time my old job was going into an office, so I was gone all day and then was coming home while my ex lived or didn't work. So he was practically home all day. So I that brought up a lot, that I was just like, "Oh, what's he gonna expect?" And for me, I kind of get to the extreme of like, "Well, I'm not doing this," or and so that definitely was something that I had to sit and reflect. And one thing I constantly have to remind myself is my boyfriend now is not my ex, and just like reminding myself that, like, yes, this feeling might be coming up, but that doesn't mean that it's the same. It's, just working and reminding myself that it's not the same. But I would say that's one. I don't know, have you experienced, what were some that came up for
I
you?
have, and even what you're talking about, so if we
Sorry.
experience like unhealthy relationships or trauma in relationships, this is like therapist Shamina talking now. The brain doesn't know how to tell the difference between similar and same, which is why we often get triggered and it feels as though we're back in that situation or with that person or what have you. So as you were talking, I was like, oh yeah, it's similar, but your brain is telling you that it's the same. So you're having like the same physiological response.
Mhm.
Um, so for me, I can remember, so I experienced a lot of emotional abuse in my previous relationship. It took a long time for me to even recognize what was happening. I did a lot of therapy. I did a lot of crying in therapy, asking my therapist. I was like, "What's wrong with me? What do I need to do?" And she'd be like, "Shamina, you're getting gaslit." And I'm like, "I don't think so." It got to the point I had to like write things down that like my ex was saying to like grab myself in reality, because like the gaslighting was just so intense that it was hard I was like truly convinced that like I was the problem and I needed to like fix
And
myself.
to not to cut you off, but isn't it crazy that like you weren't believing it? Like you were like, no, it like it anyways, just
And I again, like I'm a therapist, I help people, and I want to normalize that like anybody can become part of a relationship like that. And it's, it doesn't matter if you're college educated, high school, dropped out, like,
Mhm.
you do all this stuff. It happens to everybody. So it was really wild. And I still have some of the notes that I took during the relationship, and I go back and I'm like, oh God, like, yeah, I can see it. But before I was like, I don't know what's happening. Um, but I can remember one instance. So when I first started like hanging out with my current partner, I'm into like smutty things. I read my smutty books. I like my fantasy shit. Like, it's just part of who I am. I grew up on Twilight, 50 Shades, all of the things. That's just who I am. And my ex really used to make a lot of comments about if something was on the TV, if I was reading another book, like just constant about like sex and things like that. And I can remember I was watching Shameless with my current partner, and there was like some type of sex scene or sexual scene in nature that came on, and instantly I got really nervous, and I was like on the verge of tears and like waiting for him to say some comment to me about it, or to just kind of like talk down to me or be mean to me in some way. And I can remember, God bless his soul, I looked at him and I was like, I'm just kind of waiting for you to be upset with me because this like came on the TV. And he's like, why? And I was like, well, because I'm used to that. And like in my last relationship, my ex would make these comments and like I start crying and we're watching the show and he's just like, that I don't care.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't matter to me. Like it's a TV show. I've seen this before. I know that that comes on. I was
Mhm.
like, you're cool with it? And he was like,
Like
yeah.
you could control it too. Like you could call the director and be like, "Excuse me, you cannot have that scene on TV because my grown ass man of a boyfriend can't handle watching it."
Yeah. So that's like the first thing that came to mind that I remember, and I was like, "Oh, this shit is like deep. Like this has
Mhm.
really affected me that I'm watching a TV show and I like just physically am nervous and scared that I'm gonna
Mhm.
get in trouble, air quotes, and that like my partner's gonna be upset with me because this came on TV."
And it's I think because of what I went through, because you were with the emotions, I feel like I was always shut down too and like kind of not allowed to express my emotions. But I almost think because of that, it made me very the complete opposite moving forward. And I think that was one of the things that like I was not negotiating on of like you're not going to make me not feel heard or seen or that I can't express my emotions. And um so two stories kind of. The first one when you were making that comment, I remember like even before me and my current boyfriend started dating, but we were like talking, like we just hadn't gone official yet. I told him like my biggest thing, and it's still something that I'm working on today, is like because of what I went through for as long as I went through, my thing that I struggle with is feeling worthy and deserving of love. Like I really still am working on that. And like even today I had to like say out loud like as I am right here today, I am enough. Like not in a year when I can get this or this figured out. Right here, I'm enough. And one of our first conversations I had told him that, and we'll still like talk about it and stuff, but I will say it's like night and day in that sense of I can cry my eyes out. And he's not very expressive, but he will listen to me all day long And then me sometimes just getting out, I'm like, "Oh, why was I even crying?" But I think it's because I built it all up of like, it's gonna be a big thing of me like having to express myself, and then I cry and he's just like, "Okay." And I'm like, "Okay." And then I'm like, "Okay, I don't know why I was upset. I'm good now, you know, but it's like it was it and so that kind of is refreshing because I cry a lot.
He does.
And sometimes I think I cry because I'm anticipating like being shut down. But every time with him, he's like comforting. And so I'm like, "Oh, okay," and I'm like, "You don't ever get like upset or not upset, but just like, and he's like, and it's funny because like he'll joke and he'll be like, "No, this is just like girl stuff. This is what I signed up with when I decided I wanted a girlfriend." And I'm like, "Okay." But it's refreshing in that sense of but it's an adjustment. So like I know one of the other things we talked about was like in terms of adjusting to this new healthy relationship is like the time, but also giving ourselves grace, I think, and compassion of like we weren't shown love for an extended amount of time by the person who's supposed to love us, like, and so it's really like you said, a rewiring, because right now it's a similar situation, but it's not the same, but I'm having to unlearn the old and relearn that this is safe. I can be vulnerable and things like that. And one thing that I really appreciate and know how important is not only should you love your partner, you need to like them. And I think some people don't understand that. Like, of course I like you if I love you. No, like I think in the past with my ex, I mean, I don't know if he ever actually did love me, but he didn't like me. That's for damn sure. Like I think back and I'm like, he didn't like me, and now my partner, he wants to hang out with me and watch TV, or just wants me around, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I want to hang out with you too, and so it's like, okay, yeah. So
I think the kindness piece was really hard in the beginning for me because my partner has been very uh understanding. He knew what he was also signing up for because I was just kind of like coming out of this really unhealthy relationship. I had a lot of work to do, and he knew that, and he was willing to kind of like take things slow and just be there for what I needed. And I think the kindness was just so jarring after being gaslit for so long, after being told that like I was the problem. It
mhm,
took a really long time for me to recognize that my feelings weren't a problem and are not a problem, but they were a problem for my previous partner and
mhm,
not being able to like regulate or deal with them. But I was so convinced that it was like, I can't have feelings. I have to shut them
mhm,
down. I can't talk about them. And so when my current partner would be so kind or just listen and be understanding, I'd be like bawling my eyes out. I'm like, why do you even want to be with me? Like I'm a mess. I have all these things going on. Like and he was just so present and just kind of like I knew what I was signing up for and I'm okay with that. Like I see all of you and I want to be with that. And I think
mhm.
even sometimes to this day I'm still like, but why? Because I don't like this. So like how
It
do you like all of this?
it's the kindness, but the authenticity of the kindness, like he's not being kind for something in return.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny that you say that because I feel like that's me now of like, well, so I think from the very beginning, one, I kept waiting for like the shoe to drop or like for him to like a couple months ago, I like had a breakdown kind of like what you were saying of like why do you like me? And like I told him I'm like I'm still scared that just one day you're gonna realize that like you don't like me as much as you think or something and you're gonna leave. Or like what you had just said of I am currently struggling with working on some things and trying to better myself. And so because I'm struggling, I'm like, why do you want to be with me? You know, like because I see how I'm struggling and like a week or so ago, I again broke down and he was just like the way you are right now is enough, you know? He was like you are enough for me right here like, you know, and it's really nice because I never felt enough before and I'm still learning to accept that like I am enough right here. I'm worthy. I'm deserving of who I am. Not, you know, I feel like in the past I always had to like entertain and me just being present wasn't a good enough. It was, well, what are you going to do for me or what are we going to do that's going to, you know, bring me entertainment or fun and now we can just like sit on the couch and be cool with each other and it's like, "Oh, this is new," you know? And but I think the transitioning and adjusting to this healthy relationship is a lot and it's very difficult because it's challenging all of my past ideas that I had been taught that were not real, you know? And so, it's been hard. It has been hard, but what I have said is like it's hard, um, but I want to be better. I want to be better for me and I want to be better for us because of the relationship that we have. But I think like, you know, he recently moved in and things like that and it's been a lot. It's definitely overwhelming. I think overwhelming is like an emotion that I would describe it as. And it's good things, you know? Like I think sometimes when people hear overwhelming, they immediately think of a negative emotion or a negative connotation with that. And I wouldn't say that. It's just different and it's new and my nervous system is relearning, you know, that it's not the same situation. And so yeah, overwhelming I think is but day by day it's better.
And you bring up a good point about the nervous system piece. Again, like therapy, coming on, is coming out of like unhealthy or toxic relationships when you experience things that feel safe or calm, that sets your nervous system off. And so it's firing. And I can remember even in the beginning of my relationship, this current one, I was so anxious. I'm like, what do you need me to do? I could not sit still. I could not be present. And he's like, I just need you to be here with me, like
Mhm.
you just being here is enough. I don't
Mhm.
need anything else from you. And I could, it was like I could not compute that in my mind. Like this makes absolutely no sense to me. And it's taken, I mean, even now, and it's been almost a year and a half. It's been a process to work on my nervous system and regulating when I'm around this person or being grounded and teaching myself that like I am finally safe.
Mhm.
And this is probably the first time in my life where I've actually experienced safety in this way. And so like my whole being is like, no, this is a trap. This is a
Yeah.
trick. What's gonna happen to you? And time again, you know, I built this trust with this person and even in myself. And I think that's so challenging for people to recognize what it is. Because again, it's not just um like a mental game, but it's also physical. Your
Mm.
body has a physical response to these things, whether it's anxiety, whether it's depression, whatever it may be, but like your nervous system is trying to talk to you that we don't feel safe. And your
Mhm.
brain's like, but they haven't done anything to harm me. But your
Mhm.
body's just trying to do what it's designed to do, which is protect you.
And so that's one thing that I discuss a lot with my therapist, especially when I'm being hard on myself because you know, we're the hardest on ourselves. You know, we can give everybody grace, but when it's us, we don't give ourselves any grace. And that's one thing that I'm working on. But that's one thing that I talk about with my therapist a lot is she always says, when something bad happens, your nervous system learns like that. But when you have to teach your nervous system that you're safe again, it's she said it's not instant as it is of when something like bad happens to you of like, okay, now your nervous system knows it needs to protect you. It goes into gear, you know? But then to reteach your nervous system like, okay, it's a safe, she's like, that takes a lot of time and, you know, effort. And so if you think about it, when you're in something for a long, I was 6 years. That's 6 years of me feeling like I had to like, you know, not feeling safe, I guess, with, you know, expressing myself and things like that. So that's one thing that I'm working on of like I've been with my current boyfriend for I don't know, like 10 months, but that's not that much time in comparison to being with someone. So that's one thing that I try to work on reminding myself of um it's going to take time for me to like feel safe again like that. And I always make a point to make sure that he knows like this isn't you. This is something that I have to work through because of what I went through. And, you know, anything that he's doing, like, you know, you're doing. Obviously, if something does come up that I'm not happy with, then we have a discussion and we'll talk about it and work to find that solution or resolution, whatever it is. But there are some things that no matter what he does, I have to go through this process because it's triggering me because of what I had experienced in the past. And it's just a whole new ball game, man. It's an interesting journey. And
And I think, what was it that you just said? I had the thought, and then it's right before the ball game. What did you just say?
um like it's interesting triggers, new trigger. It's not him, it's something I have to go through.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. That is, I work with so many people who are like, I want to work on myself before I get into a relationship. And I tell my clients all the time, like, there is some work that we can do, but it is very limited until you get back
Yep.
into dating or into a relationship because you can't anticipate the triggers that you're going to experience because you need that other person to activate it for you. You can't anticipate your reactions or responses. And so, I am not a believer of you've got to work on yourself first before you can get back into a relationship. I think some things, yes,
I
but
agree.
it's concurrent.
Mhm.
I am going to continue to be working on myself while I am in this relationship, and my partner is going to be the one to help me through that and to help kind of heal these things because he activates the stuff that I need to work on. And without that, I wouldn't be able to do it or put it into practice or work towards like
Mhm.
changing my experience with it.
And it's funny because I agree 100%. I think you can work on yourself all you want, you know, alone, but things will come up when you decide to and not just like hookups or random dating, but when you decide to make that commitment to a relationship with someone and really work with someone. I mean, triggers can come up when you're dating and hooking up as well, but because every different phase you're going to have things come up. And I just think it's a lot, you know, and I think it's frustrating sometimes. I know I don't want to go too deep into it because that's what we're going to talk about next episode, but it's frustrating sometimes when you see videos about people who are in healthy relations and they make it seem so easy. You know, like it was an easy transition. It just felt natural and I call bullshit because there's no way that it was easy and natural. I'm sorry. Like, and so for me, I got rid of social media because I felt like it was making me feel bad, you know? or like something was wrong. Like, why am I struggling more? And then that goes back to, reminding myself to give myself some grace. And it takes time, like we first off, we're never going to be fully healed ever because we're constantly experiencing things in life, but also like it takes time, be patient with yourself. Sometimes I think the harder I am on myself, that the more I struggle, and I'm trying to find that balance, but man, it's yeah, it is. It really is. It really is. I don't even know. Like, I don't know how to put it into words because it's a struggle that I want to go through because I know it's worth it, but it also sucks. It's hard, Like, I don't know if that's makes sense at all, like, but I want to be better. That's the biggest thing is like I want to be better for me and I want to be better for us because I know that it's worth that. Um just need the patience like, like
I think patience, but also like acceptance of where you're at. And it
mhm,
doesn't mean that you have to like where you're at or that you're giving yourself excuses, but that you're gonna break down.
mhm,
Or you're gonna have days where you get triggered, or you're gonna have days where you're like doubting things or questioning things, and like that's just where you're at. And I think that that's been really helpful for me to work through. I feel a lot of shame when I have very big emotions, and I have learned throughout my
mhm,
life that when I have really big emotions, I need to go hide, whether
mhm,
that's like emotionally or like physically remove myself
mhm.
and be alone, and then I can come back when I'm like presentable and don't have those feelings.
I
And
think that's like, not to cut you off, but I think that's a societal, like a lot of people, I think, because going back to why we started this in the first place is we're not taught, I think, enough about emotions other than happiness. And like, I'm sorry, but we can't feel happy all the time. It's just not realistic. But then we're not taught how to experience these other emotions that seem hard and are overwhelming and very intense. And so then we don't know what to do, and then no one talks about these emotions, so then you see everyone around you and they seem happy, so then you're like, well, what's wrong with me? I can't present myself this way because no one else is. They're all covering it and hiding it. And I think that's why, because I feel the same way. Like, my biggest thing is I'm always like, if I'm not feeling great, I'm worried, like, what if I go out and I break down? Like, what if, and it's like, okay, but going back to like, you have except it's a lot easier said than done. Clearly, I'm still, but sorry to finish your thought.
so I think that that's been helpful for me as I'm still working through that, but like my partner shows up in a way that he's like, I want to know. I don't want you to sit alone anymore. Like, you're not alone. I am here. And that's really hard for me to
Mhm.
believe. And he's given me absolutely no reason not to believe him, but everything else in my life has taught me I cannot believe this. I need to protect myself. Like, you, when are you going to kind of
Mhm.
like fit into this narrative that I have in my mind? And
Mhm.
so I think that's been the hardest part, is letting myself be seen when I'm vulnerable, and being okay that I
Yeah.
even feel that way. Um, but I even sometimes, like, I'll talk to my clients and they're going through something, and I was like, I've been through a similar situation, and like I'll self-disclose a little bit, and just the way that their facial expressions change of like, thank you so much for telling me. Like, it means so much to me to know that like somebody else has gone through this, or like this is normal, quote
Yeah.
unquote, for how people experience things. And you're right that we don't know how to deal with emotion. We don't talk about it enough. And I think for us as women as well, like we're supposed to present ourselves in a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
And if we don't, then like we're too sensitive or we're too much or we're too
Mm-hmm.
reactive. And so I think that also has pressure of like how you just present yourself as a woman.
Yeah, and you had said something, and of course I lost my thought. It was one of your last. What was the last sentence? Not just then, but
Telling my clients,
oh, and I think that goes back to like what we had said in the beginning of like when some just knowing someone else experienced it and we're not alone in these feelings, I think is so comforting and reassuring. And like, I'm a really big words of affirmation person. And I think it's because sometimes I don't think so highly of myself that when I hear other people say good things about me, it is helpful because I might be struggling to see those good things because I might be only focusing on like the negative things about myself. So, like, for example, I was just kind of having a conversation like this recently with one of my friends, and she was just like, "You communicate so well." She's like, "You're such a good communicator." And I'm like, it's really nice to hear that because I probably wouldn't think so. But hearing her say that and like it's something that she wants to work on and be better, makes me feel better of like, oh wow, like, like you see me over here like trying and working, trying to be better. And I told her, I was like, I think the reason why I try to communicate so well is because I didn't have that in the past. And so that was one of the things that I don't want to negotiate on anymore. I want to be able to be vulnerable or and talk to my partner and communicate. And I just don't want to be married or with my partner and we not communicate with each other, like I think you see that a lot in older generational marriages of like they don't talk to each other, they don't know, and it's just it blows my mind that like you have no idea what's going on, or like you don't listen to your partner. I just don't get it. And so like I'm just like no, like, and I think this goes back to like, I want to be with someone that I like and that I look forward to spending days with them, even if it's doing nothing. And I feel comfortable talking to them about but going back to it of just, I think the biggest thing in general is it's really reassuring and comforting knowing other people feel it because we don't people don't talk about their struggles as much. And so then when someone does is vulnerable enough with you and you can relate, it's very comforting of like, okay, I'm not the only one that is feeling this way.
super healing. And sometimes like we just need that validation. Like I just had therapy last week with my therapist, and towards the end I was like, is this normal? Is this like a good thing? She's just like, yeah, this is good, this is normal. And I ask her that all the time because I don't have a blueprint for it. Like everything that I've ever experienced is like unhealthy or red flags
Mhm.
or, not quote unquote normal. And so sometimes I need that perspective of like, yeah, Shamina, this is okay. And like, yes, this makes sense. Of course you feel this way. And sometimes like that's literally all that I need.
And it's funny that you say that because I think like one of the things that I really struggle with is like trusting myself. And like I think I question everything of about me because I had been questioned in the past, so I'm like, am I doing it right? Am I? And so like that's a thing like you said of is this normal? And so we all have intrusive thoughts, whatever. And one thing that my therapist always reminds me, she's like, Carly, like 95% of your thoughts are trash. Like they don't mean anything unless you're like really thinking about it. And I'm like, okay, so like if I ever think about like putting my hand down the garbage disposal, that's like an intrusive. And she's like, yes, like, and I'm like, okay, because like I don't ever actually want to do it, but sometimes I'm like, hmm. And I'm like, but is that like normal? And she was like, yeah, people have like crazy intrusive thoughts all the time. And I'm like, oh, okay, but like to me, I was like, something's wrong with me. Like, why would I think that? But no, people like think weird shit like that all the time. It's just we like they can decipher like, oh, that's crazy, not gonna do that. And like, yes, I acknowledge like that's crazy, but it's the point where I was questioned so much about like my core that I'm like, wait, like what's going, it's almost like I don't have that like, yeah, no, Carly, like, and so I'm like, okay, yeah, no, like, but it's just funny because like you said, like, it's almost like you have to be like, is this normal? Because I don't know. So I'm
And
like, okay, yeah.
that's how I felt with like even my feelings, because my ex would tell me that like my feelings were the problem, being a therapist was a problem. I used to analyze, I'm using air quotes again, like too much, or I needed to talk to my therapist before I could make decisions about my life or figure things out, and like just really demeaning what I do for a profession, and the things that I'm trying to do to help myself. And so just even the fact that like I have feelings or I express them or they're negative has been a big challenge, because I was told for years, this is a problem. You need to figure this out. Like you need to get this
Hmm.
under control. And so just that piece alone has been really challenging. And my current partner, like he's not a emotionally expressive person or like touchy-feely person, whatever, but he listens. And he may
Exactly.
not understand, but he's like, I want to know what's going on. I,
Hmm.
I want to know what's going on inside your head. And I was like, it's a scary place in there. Like, are you sure? And
And
sometimes
I
he'll ask, and he just looks at me like, what is happening in there? I'm like, I don't know. This is just my everyday.
and it's funny because I think, my boyfriend's the same way, but I think the biggest thing, because that was a conversation I had with my therapist in the very beginning, because I like to have deep conversations, and he's not emotionally expressive like that. And at one point, I brought it up to her, like, kind of concerned, like, I don't know if this is gonna work, like, he doesn't, like, because in the very beginning, I feel like I tried to push him. Like I got those cards to like connect, and it's just not him. It's just not like he was not into it, and like so I said something to my therapist of like, I'm concerned, and she was like, but he listens to you, and she's like, you have to understand that he's not going to be able to fill your cup entirely, but that's why you have friends and family, and she's like, you cannot rely on him for everything. She was like, okay, so he doesn't have deep conversations. She's like, get that with your friends. When you hang out with your friends, fill your cup with that with your friends or your family. And I really think that helped me like take that step back and be like, you know what, you're right. Like he might not be able to engage in it at the level that I can, but he listens and he's there for me. Because like in the past with my last relationship, if I'd be like, "Hey, can we talk?" Like, kind of like opening the door. And then, he'd be like, already you could tell he was like annoyed. And then I would kind of go through my emotions, and he'd be like, "Oh, like I was having a good day before." And I'm like, "All right, well, sorry, fuck me then, because I have feelings." And so I got to a point where like I didn't even want to share them with him, because it was like, why, But then of course, but so it's definitely different of like, okay, he might not fully understand that, but he's there and he listens and he lets me get out what I need to get out, and so we get get it from that. But I think a really big thing too is I think a lot of times people rely on their romantic partner to give them everything, and that's just not realistic, and that's one thing I think I'm learning, because I think I did do that in the past. You know, I messed up too. I could have done things differently as well. That was my first relationship ever, and I think I did have a lot of expectations on him. And so that's something that I'm learning in this current one of he can't give me everything I need. You know, I'm we still need to have an autonomous life, and then bring them into it, and kind of have that like river flowing of like he can do his thing, I can do my thing, and be content, not like if he's doing his thing, I'm just like, what do I do because I don't have you, like, and that's something that I've had to learn too. So it's a lot of learning of just things you wouldn't have even realized. But I think for me, I am really adamant on wanting to have a healthy relationship, whether it's with this current person forever or what, but I just want to develop and know what is a realistically healthy partner. And again, we're human, we're gonna have flaws. I'm not perfect. I get annoyed, and just last night we were talking about groceries, and I didn't even realize it triggered me because in the past I paid for everything, and we were talking about how we were going to split it, and I didn't even realize until today, and I had to take a step back, and I texted and apologized, and I said, I got defensive because I thought you were going to take advantage of me. But I see you, that's not who you are, and I'm sorry for that. But in the moment when we were talking about how we were going to navigate those finances, I did, and I didn't even realize it, but I was very defensive of like, no, you need to give me the money, like, and it was just because I have been there where I've had to handle everything, and it's hard. But
I think you bring up a good point about like I felt like I had my glasses on, so I was like, let me move my chair glasses that aren't on my face. Like managing expectations when coming into a healthy relationship, because if we've been in unhealthy ones, we form attachment very quickly to people. We experience like the spark, the butterflies, like, oh my gosh, I'm so infatuated with this person. And I have found that like healthy relationships are like a nice slow burn,
yeah.
and it's very calm, and there aren't like, yes, you get excited, you got the dopamine, the oxytocin, like all the nice chemicals and stuff, but it does not feel like you are jumping
That
off the side of
rush.
a cliff and like you're
Mhm.
gonna bungee jump or something. And I think for so many people, we make that association is like that connection
That's
means that
love.
like that's love. This is so important. Like this is meaningful. This is gonna go somewhere. And I work a lot with my clients of like, yeah, that's actually a really big red flag. And like we need to like unpack that a little bit, but I think that's even hard of managing the
Oh,
expectations. Like
yeah.
I don't feel the way that I felt in my last relationship when this started. Like, does that mean I like this person as much? Does that mean that I want to continue with them? Like, why don't I feel those things? What's going on with me? And, just I
That was
spiral.
literally my narrative. Like,
Oh, I remember.
yeah, like we've talked about it of, in the past with my ex, it was a very chasing kind of, and so I did always feel that like rush, like super, super high, super, super low. Like that's how it was, high, low. There was no like steady. And now with my partner, and it's funny because he's even said like, the managing expectations of, I don't want you to whatever. And I've had this conversation with you and the girls when we hang out of like, I'm like, sometimes I question because like I just feel calm with him, and now I'm used to it, but I was like, it's like I'm just hanging out with my best friend, but like, and I really had to be like, yeah, because love is not just romantically, we love our family, we love our friends. And, I think about the love that I have for my parents and stuff, and like obviously, like not romantically, but there's never been this like up and down. It's always been steady. And I'm like, that's what you want. You want that steadiness, you want that reliability, that consistency. And so that was something really new that I had to learn, that like it's just this calming feeling, like that doesn't mean that I don't like him. It's actually a good thing that like I feel calm around him. And like another thing that I am I blah, 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 I was working through in the beginning was if he did something to upset me, I would go very extreme, and immediately, I never said this to him, but immediately I would be like, we're not going to work. I think we need to, like in my head, like if we disagreed on something, anything, and I think that was me trying to protect myself. And so my immediate thought was, oh, I don't think we're gonna work out. And like obviously I never said it to him. It was just like things, the extreme in my head. But that was also a thing because I think again, I was trying to protect myself of like I have this good thing, and almost protect slash self-sabotage because I was expecting things. I'm waiting for the shoe to drop and it's not. He's not doing anything. So I need to do something because I need to get the result that I'm expecting so I can be like, "See, I told you so." Obviously unhealthy. But that was something that, anytime we had, and then every time though we'd work through it. We would talk through it. I would, either let him know that I'm upset, or he would bring it up of like, "Hey," because he would always tell me, I tend to like shut down, or I'll say this and then I'll let you speak. One thing I forget in the very beginning when we first started dating was I would pick arguments for no reason because I didn't know that like we could be good like for an extended period of time and like nothing come up because I'd never had that before. So I would just pick. I would just find and he even said he was like, "I feel like you're making this up." Like he was just like, "You're where is this coming from?" And he was like he even was like, "I need you to work through this," because he's like, "I can't, like nothing has changed." Because I'd be like, "Your energy is off. You're acting different." He's like, "I'm not." He's like, "Not," and he wasn't. It was just I was looking for that high low because that's what I knew and I wasn't getting that, so I was trying to create it. So, it's so funny these things are coming up and I'm like, "Whoa," but
And it like becomes this vicious cycle because it's like this self-fulfilling prophecy. Like you expect something, so then you do a behavior that gets that result, and then you're like, see, I fucking knew it. Or like,
yep.
see, I told myself, and then like we get stuck in this place, or like I isolate or I shut down. And then when I do that, I'm sending signals to my partner of like, leave me alone. Like,
And
why
then he
would you go?
does, and then you're mad that he does. Yeah.
Yeah. Or I'm like, he doesn't care about me. See, he doesn't care because if he did, then he'd come to you and you guys would work it out. And my therapist would be like, Shamina, seriously? And
But
I'm
I
just like,
think that goes to like what you said of like we can be the problem too. So we have to
mhm.
take that step back and take that accountability. And that's something that I've been working on too of like apologizing. Like, you know what? Like even today when I text and I was like, I was defensive. That's really hard for people to do. It's hard for people to apologize, but it only strengthens it. But
For sure. So we are super excited. This is just kind of part one of four parts of this kind of healthy relationship series that we want to do with you guys. And, we'll get into some good stuff along the way. But this episode was really just about being able to normalize the
adjustment.
adjustment of kind of coming into healthy relationships, some of our experiences. It's also really funny how like as we're talking I'm like, oh my god, I remember this and I remember this, and I'm like, god, I used to act like that in the beginning. Like I've come a long way.
With
um
the picking of the fights, I was like, oh my God.
yeah, so we hope that this helps to normalize some of this stuff. If you can also relate, we've been there. We're still
Yeah.
working on it.
And I don't know what our social medias are right now, but I know for sure we have Instagram. So,
We still have our Facebook.
okay, Instagram and Facebook. So definitely, when we post, feel free to comment, send us a DM. I would love to hear everyone's feedback. It's happy. I'm happy to be back. I forget how much I love being in the chair and talk, I'm a talker, but I forget how much I love it and just having good back and forth. So I appreciate our conversations.
So our Facebook page is Emotionful Podcast. Our Instagram handle is at Emotionful Pod. If you don't follow us, you're missing out. So follow us, like, comment. We also, I don't know if we're gonna do YouTube or not, but like we have a YouTube. It's Emotionful Podcast. You can like and subscribe to
Well,
it.
how else would we upload this?
Oh, that's true.
Duh.
So check us out on YouTube. We're on all the things, Apple Podcast, Spotify, you name it, we're there because we're back, baby.
We back. So, as always, it's great talking.
What was our Oh, I remember. Are you feeling full?
Are you full yet?
Are you?
Are you?
Are you? I
That's
totally
good.
forgot that that's
I
what we used
know.
to do.
Well, good.
So, I'm feeling full of emotion. It's been nice to be back, and I think this series I'm a little more out of the therapist role than I used to be when we previously did this, and it's nice to just kind of like lay down that hat for a second and be a person
For
and
sure.
not therapist, all the time.
Yes, ma'am. Well, you'll be hearing from us soon.
Stay
Until
tuned.
then,
Bye.
bye.